What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Today we are here talking about episode 9 of Brawn Beauty 2 Co-Wrong. Wow, this episode was another one of those emotional roller coasters, but it was mainly lows. Yeah, just like watching the episode, I was so peeved off. Then by the end, I was just pissed off. And then the best part was seeing Nick on the jury. I'm just kidding. But so my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and as you guys may have noticed by now, I don't have a video feed because the camera on my laptop mysteriously decided it did not want to work. So hopefully this will be fixed by next week's podcast, but we really wanted to get this done on time so that we can share all of our ideas with you guys in a timely fashion.
Yeah, hopefully I'm not on the camera this whole time because that'll be sort of awkward.
There was that one time I was on the camera the whole time.
Yeah, true. Oh man, the good times. So, one of the main reasons, I don't know, this episode was just sort of annoying because of the actions by some of the players. So we'll start with the psychological warfare, and Scot is the first one to mention like messing with the other tribe mates. Then Jason was all on board, being like, when I was in the military and for bounty hunting, I used psychological warfare all the time. Like, I can't tell who's more up the other person's ass.
I just like they're like fine apart. Like Scot wasn't that big of a douche when he wasn't with Jason, and Jason didn't totally make me want to vomit every time he came onto screen when he wasn't with Scot. But like together, they're like the perfect storm. And I think also like their definition of psychological warfare is really interesting because I think that their psychological warfare is just being petty.
No, yeah, their psychological warfare is basically like being an asshole to everyone else on the tribe. Like, why are you being such a big crybaby about Nick getting voted off and you guys being blindsided? Like, chill out, mates. It's part of the game. You don't need to go all OP crazy wanting to weaken the girls and trying to switch things up. I feel like hiding the machete and axe isn't going to allow things to be switched up or someone to quit. It's just going to divide a bigger wedge between you guys and everyone else because no one will like you.
I think part of it is also it doesn't really seem like strategy. It just seems like they were pissed off and they wanted to do something about it. Like if they had done this from the beginning, I could totally see that working as a strategy. But it was not from the beginning.
Exactly. Like, they didn't even do a good job at doing their psychological warfare because, oh, whoop-de-doo, the axe and machete are missing in the morning. Who's the culprit? It's obviously one of you two. You're not even, like, good at hiding this stuff.
Yeah, I feel like if they really wanted to sow discord, they could have done it in a lot better ways. And also, I think in a lot subtler ways, because I think psychological warfare is the most effective when you feel like the people that were your allies are turning on you rather than the people you already dislike are just making you dislike them more.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised no one mentioned like Russell Hantz or Sandra for this because they did it correctly, hiding things like secretively like socks or like dumping out the fish, because then you can blame other people for doing it. Them doing that. Obviously, you're the ones who hit it. Scot dumped the 5 gallons of water onto the fire in plain daylight in front of everyone.
Literally did it in front of everyone. I don't know. I just think like you're worsening your own life too. Like you're not going to be able to get food either. And I think that they kind of think that the machete is just going to magically appear whenever they need it, and it's like
Yeah,
it would be a good strategy if it was done well, but this is not done well.
yeah, it is definitely not done well. These guys are acting like such big babies about Nick getting voted off. You know, if you wanted to work with everyone, you can act nice and just be a suck up to everyone so you can get in the good graces and potentially work with them. But this is definitely driving a wedge. And then Scott was, in one of his annoying confessionals, he was like, the girls are acting all like proud and stuff that they can open a coconut in a different way. And then I'm like, what the even heck? Good for the girls not acting phased by being bullied or like being punished by these dudes. And like they were like, we can make it work. And like, Scott, what do you expect them to do when you hide the weapons? What, like, lie down and then like lie down and quit the game? No, they're gonna fight just like you're fighting. Basically, they need to. It's a game, bro. Scott, I feel like Scott and Jason are just so self-centered because all of their stuff is like I, we. Why are they sabotaging us? Like we are in the power position. And then he basically, when he dumps all this stuff on the fire, he's like, Joe, you're the fire starter. You can start the fire. Like, that's when people drop trash on the ground and then tell the custodians because that's their job to pick it up. Like, dude, dude. And then, okay, we could talk about Ty going to the dark side.
Like, I really hated it because, like, I had a lot of respect for Ty, and I thought that he was genuinely a good person, but I don't think that you can preach and say that you're compassionate to all animals and all people, and then do something willfully, knowing that it makes life harder for everyone. Like, if you don't believe that this is a good strategy, then you can leave behind Scot and Jason. It's not like there isn't another alliance for you if you wanted it. Like, people are more than happy to take you in, but you're not helping that at all. And when you lie down with the dogs, you're gonna come up with fleas, man.
Yeah, he was like, I don't really feel comfortable with what Scott and Jason are doing, but then he goes and copies Scott and dumps water on the fire also. Like, from his edit, from never wanting to hurt a living thing to being rude and then doing this stuff. It's like, ever since Caleb left, you know, Ty, he's a hot mess.
Spiral.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this in, like, we're going to do, like, good move, bad move for each of the players for voting Debbie off. It's like, some people may vote for Scott or Jason if they made it to the end because they could see this as a somewhat strategy. We can talk about it later, though, but maybe.
So, the reward challenge, aka Julia makes the stupidest move that you ever can make in Survivor. And that's pretty much betray your alliance by showing you're willing to work with the other guys. Like,
yeah, so Jeff Probst, because, you know, he knows that there's, like, animosity, there's tension between, which, yeah, I was like, yeah, I really liked how they could just pick their own teams of 4-4 and then one person sits out because, you know, when it's these random teams, you don't really know who to root for. Like, oh, I like this person, but I don't like Scott or Jason. I don't want their team to win the reward challenge. So having all of, like, one people on one side and the other people on the other side, it's sort of, like, easy to root for one team to win because I was like, you know, if Scott and Jason are with the girls, like, on a team, what if they purposely be slow or purposely try to hold up the tribe because they don't want the girls to win?
yeah, so Joe volunteered to sit out, and then he chose that he thought that the winning team was going to be the group that was all women, which was Michelle, Sydney, Aubry, and Debbie.
Yeah, Joe's the first one to opt out of the challenge. Like, okay, old dude. I mean, I can see, you know, not participating in the challenge. You can just bet on who's going to win and you can get the food. Okay. But then he picks to back the girls, which I can see because he's in with the girls. But, like, I feel like the guys would be more likely to win this challenge because they do have that kind of strong arm that you need to throw the, like, bean bags that far to hit the poles off of the platform.
I think that Joe was kind of worried that if he chose the boys to win, he would be getting the same flack as Julia did, as far as like not supporting his team or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's a problem. I feel like Julia's move is good because it does set her up nicely if she were to want to work with Jason and Scott to get to like the final three. Because if she went to the final three, I feel like she could have a chance to win. We can talk about later, but I think she's playing the middle too obviously. Like she flips too quickly to go over to the guy's side. I mean, if she was like offered like, oh guys, you know, I would go if you guys want me to go, or being like, oh, I don't know, but I'll go, instead of being I'll go right after Jeff says who wants to go.
Yeah, and like Aubry says, sometimes the guy in the middle of the road gets run over. And like Julia is putting herself at the bottom of both alliances by making herself obvious about wanting to be a part of both of them, because no one wants a traitor on their team.
That's true. Except in the preview for next time, Scott and Jason offer Julia a final three deal. We'll see, but it could be a final two this season, as we're seeing the numbers play out like that. So we'll see about that.
And we both know that if it was a final two, Julia would not be a part of it.
Yeah, final two with Scott and Jason and Julia'd be the odd one out. Or if Scott and Jason felt that they play too similar, you know, one could try to get the other one out. Because I feel like they are too similar. It'd be difficult to, it'd be a close one because both are sort of sucky. Yeah, so the guys and Julia win the immunity challenge or reward challenge, so they get to eat the Chinese food, and I thought the food looked really good. And then Mark the chicken was on the immunity or on the reward, because in one of these like secret scenes, all the girls were like, "Let's kill the chicken," you know. I thought it would have been funny if they killed the chicken to get back at them.
I think it would be too.
I know. If Ty came back and that chicken were dead, and then you just see like Debbie and Sydney and Aubry and them all eating Mark. Wow. Let's vote the chicken off the island. But yeah, I feel like during the reward challenge, Scott and Jason sort of worked Julia really well. They sort of asked her questions and they didn't like force her into anything, which is sort of good for that. I mean, like I said, I feel like Scott and Jason are playing in their own special way. They are playing the game. Sort of crazy, though, more like Russell or Brandon Hans style, which may not turn out too hot. But if the jury isn't like salty or something and they see that this is like an, I don't know, an applicable good game strategy, they could give him the million. What do you think?
I really don't know, because it's hard to separate like morality from gameplay, I think. And I think honestly it depends on the group of jurors that you have, because some jurors don't really respect a great game if it means that you backstab people.
Yeah.
But then some jurors are like, a good game is a good game. It doesn't matter how many people you are to get there. Because like I think you can see that in the difference between Russell Hans never winning and Tony Vlachos winning his season.
Yeah, that's true. I think, yeah, it does depend on the jury. If Scott or Jason made it that far, it does depend on the jury if they could potentially win the game. That would be the day.
I feel like the people who are remaining, who might go to the jury, like Michelle, Aubry, Sydney, them, I don't think that they'd be willing to put the animosity aside, especially considering just how petty they were about everything that happened to them.
True. I feel like if either Scott or Jason went to the jury and the other was that final tribal, he would vote for the other. I feel like Nick or Neal might be able to vote for one of them because they weren't like on the island during this psychological warfare to get that kind of treatment from them, you know, so they don't really see the other kind of side of them as the girls do. And
But
Joe, what is Joe doing?
I think that if the guys spend time on Ponderosa with the
True.
people who are voted out, they're going to feel more of an affinity for those people, especially if they develop like personal relationships with them than they are for like Scott and Jason. So they might be able to like change each other's minds.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. One of the main reasons why Russell didn't win because everyone on the jury would talk and were all pissed off with him. Didn't want to hang.
Yeah.
So tribe dynamics. I feel like Debbie is way too trusting. She flat out like tells Julia all of the plans
That's
right
after the immunity challenge.
yeah, but like I don't see how Debbie can trust Julia so much after you see like don't you have to be somewhat reserved in this kind of moment?
I think that Debbie's hamartia is the fact that she's unwilling to see any perspective other than her own. Like Aubry can tell her, Debbie, this is a bad idea. Debbie, this is a bad idea. But Debbie doesn't believe that until she suffers the consequences for herself. And
Yeah,
even then, she might still believe that it's a good idea.
yeah, true. Because even in her like confessionals that were posted online, she was saying like there's a 100% chance that I'm not going home tonight.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Nah, Debbie, bye-bye. But we see Sydney and Aubry are becoming a new pairsome on the island. I think Aubry tells Sydney that she really, really trusts her.
I think that's a really good alliance to make a trust in, just because I think that Sydney values loyalty and she also values like being a good person. Like she doesn't like it when people are rude to her or when people like openly disclude her. And I
Mm.
think that Aubry is a lot better at keeping people happy than Kyle and or than Jason and Scott are. So
Yeah, I feel like both of these females knew when to ditch their old alliances. Like Sydney knew when to hop the boat off the Bronze, and then Aubry is now learning that you got to get rid of these brains because some of them are like even with the Peter vote off, like she knew when you have to cut someone on your tribe loose. And it was interesting in the Rob Has a Podcast live podcast show. Stephen Fishback is like, he's the Aubry and Sydney is like the JT or Jeremy. So looking good for me because anyone who pairs with Fishback always wins the game. Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like Aubry sort of overanalyzes everything because she was saying how Scott is doing this kind of fire put out, hiding everything deliberately so that he and Jason get votes. So then they would like get the votes and then use the idols. So I feel like she's overanalyzing that.
I'm not sure if I agree with that. Just because, like, in this case, her overanalysis, well, she does overanalyze, but I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing
Yeah,
for her.
yeah.
Just because, like, there's overanalysis to the point of paranoia, and then there's overanalysis that ends up informing your choices in the game. And I think that Aubry is the latter, where, like, she overanalyzes, but it still ends up helping her.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't feel like it's detrimental to her yet, but if she becomes like more, if this is all I can think about and then it like eats her alive, then it'll be sort of problematic to her gameplay.
Yeah, I can see that. So, immunity challenge.
Yeah, I really like this immunity challenge because like anyone could win the stacking of the blocks, to make it the like I forget the
The
word. Like,
domino
yeah, the
effect.
domino effect to knock them all down. It was really suspenseful and fun to watch because there's so many different people leading. Like, Michelle could have had it, Debbie could have had it, Scott or Jason could have had it. So it was really like suspenseful. And then it's unlike those baller balancing challenges because then you know when someone's gonna drop.
I feel like one is like, it isn't about physical strength or anything. It's about patience. Because if you're patient enough, it doesn't matter how slow you go because other people are going to rush and end up knocking their things over. And yeah.
Yeah, basically, like Julia did, you have to get it on the first time because if you do it and then all your blocks are down, there's no way you can sort of catch up. So it's one of those things like slow and steady wins the race. And when Jeff says go at the beginning of the immunity challenge, Joe just literally stands there for like 3 seconds. Like, what's up with this? He's slugging it. But
Joe.
I don't know about Joe. We can talk about that at Tribal. But Julia wins the immunity challenge. Yip, yip, hooray. I don't feel like there's a lot of talk about the immunity challenge. But when she wins, she ruins all of the plans to vote her out and basically saves herself at the right time.
Yep. And then they go back to camp, and everyone is scrambling because they need to figure out what their plans are and who they're voting for, and a lot of stuff seems to change at the last minute.
That is one of the other things that peeves me off. So this is when Debbie gives Julia that whole plan about let's split the vote between Ty and Scott. And like, I feel like you sort of have to be somewhat cautious, you know, maybe tell the people who you're in the tight alliance with and then go tell her afterwards because now she knows the plan and it would be a 3-3-3 vote, which makes it tricky if she flips, it'd be 4-3-2.
Yeah, which would totally ruin the entire thing.
And then, yeah, she tells the guys the plan, so it, you know.
So it was a good thing that the plan changed.
Yes. Which, I don't know, we can talk for the good move versus bad move, but Aubry and Sydney want to vote out Debbie because they think she's not logical and that they can vote out the guys later. But I feel like they sort of are missing the opportune prime time window to get them out. Because after a certain point, it's hard to, at the final stretch, if someone wins immunity, you can go on an immunity run, and then it's hard to get the person out. You need to do it when you can.
I think part of it is they need to flush the idol early because as long as Scott and Jason and Ty have that idol, it's like it's looming over you and you don't want to make any risks.
Yeah, which is the exact problem now that they have the idol and they could potentially get the majority next week because people are afraid of this super idol or 2 regular immunity idols. So that's a problem for all of our favorites. And I feel like, so Julia agrees to vote for Debbie. I feel like Julia would not have voted to vote Scott or Ty out if they went with that original plan.
Yeah. I think that part of it is since Julia was running information in only one direction, people aren't as in the loop as they really think they are. Because like Sydney was really close to being voted out, and she didn't even know that.
Yeah. So Tribal Council, that's when we got to see our bays, Nick and Neal, come back from Ponderosa. Oh man, Tribal was just a huge fiasco. And not a good fiasco. It was not a fiesta. It was a fiasco.
I don't even like know what to say. Like they were so cocky.
Yeah, it was like one big hot mess. Scott gets up and tells everyone the plan about who has the idols, who's playing the idols, and then they make a huge show out of it and then saying, oh, we're going to rock, paper, scissors, and then whoever doesn't get the idol is on the chopping block. Like, I feel like when you make that kind of a big of a deal like that, you're sort of have to be bluffing there's no way you're gonna straight flat out tell everyone the plan of who's playing the idols. We're gonna rock, paper, scissors, which would be so dumb anyway to actually do that. And then, like, I don't know. It just, I feel like it, nah.
I think that, like, I feel like flaunting the idol was a bad move just because now people can figure out the, like, logic behind the super idol. Like, when you say that there is a super idol and then you don't play an idol before the votes, then I think that people can pretty safely assume that a super idol is an idol that can be played after the votes have been read. And, like, showing that part of their hand wasn't as smart.
Yeah, and even Ty said it last episode, saying that the super idol can be played after the vote. So now when everyone else puts 2 and 2 together, like, I don't think it doesn't really matter if people know that you have a super idol, because it doesn't really lose its power. You can still play it after the votes are read. Not like if you had the individual immunity idol, then people knew you had it, then they would try to flush it. Like this, if you had it, you know, they vote for you and you can pull it up after the vote, even if you didn't know you're going to be voted for. Like, I don't know. I just like the whole trying to make this a big deal of let's rock, paper, scissors, let's play these idols. Oh no, let's give them to Ty. Like, oh, it was just sort of, I mean, it made for a good tribal because I was like, what the heck is happening? Why are they doing this? But I don't know. It was sort of like a reverse Three Amigos kind of tribal council with immunity idols from Fans vs. Favorite 2.
Yeah. I think that, like, all in all, it's their attitude that's going to get them in trouble the most rather than, like, anything strategically, because, like, jurors don't like to see people who are cocky. Like last season when Spencer told Jeremy, "Oh, I will make sure that no one votes for you." He came across as really cocky, and that worked against him.
Yeah, and then along with that, like, opposite of sort of being cocky, I feel like Joe needs to stop playing so emotionally, because honestly, he wouldn't vote for Peter to get voted out. He didn't vote for Debbie to get voted out. Like, if you're not going to vote and like vote out your alliance members, I mean, that's sort of part of the game. You sort of have to get over the fact that you'll be backstabbing these people. It's sort of like the coach thing, how he never won because he was so over the top with, I'm such a good person, I'm with this good morals, I'm keeping my good morals throughout the game. But it's like, just put on the facade of being a backstabbing asshole and just go for it.
Like, I think to a certain extent, people are going to be able to realize that who you are in the game might not be who you are in real life. And I don't know, there's a level of, like, people realize that in order to win the game, you do need to backstab people, so it's not going to,
Like,
it's not going to reflect negatively on them as a person. Whereas, like, it's not necessary to be a dick to everyone to win the game, which is why there are more negative impressions of players like Russell or Scott.
yeah, I know. I feel like Scott or Jason, if there's another heroes versus villains, they would be invited back. I mean, it makes for good TV. It's interesting, but sometimes they just peeve me off. And, you know, like we said, they could win the game, so we're not like total Scott and Jason haters. You know, they have their merits. But I was thinking, you know, oh yes, Ty has 2 idols. He can totally keep the super idol to himself and then flip with the girls and Joe and then backstab Scott and Jason, because, you know, he would realize that going with Scott and Jason is sort of poisonous to his game. But apparently Jason tweeted out saying Ty gave him back the idol after tribal. I'd be like, boy, I'm stealing this idol up. Bye.
Yeah, I think that Ty just is like, he's too sweet for his own good, but he's also too bad for his own good.
Yeah, I feel like he's being too nice. If Jason asked for the idol back then, he's like, okay, here it is. I'd be like, no, I can keep it for safekeeping. We can give it back to you never later. But I don't know. If Ty had both idols in his pocket, he would be so powerful. But now it's just not as powerful. But it was 2 votes for Scott, 3 for Sydney, and then 4 for Debbie. So should we go into the good move versus bad move?
Yep. And are we just going to say good, bad for each of them?
And then, like, explain. I wrote some stuff for them. So I guess we can start with Aubry, if this was a good or a bad move. You can go first.
I feel like Aubry is the one person that I can't solidly say this was a good move or this was a bad move because it all depends on how the future plays out. So I'm going to say neutral.
True. I was thinking yeah, I initially was like bad move because voting out Debbie, she's an ally and she's like a somewhat loyal brain, and she might be easy to win against at the end if like something happens. But if Aubry is like as tight as she says with Sydney now, they became the real close allies. Aubry doesn't really need Debbie, but now it's sort of, it'd be 3 guys and then 4, those 3 and Joe, and then Julia's in the middle again. It could potentially be like a 4-4 tie, and then an idol or something would make one of the girls or Joe go home next time. Yeah. So Sydney, I think this was a 100% good move because if they didn't switch, or like if the original plan of Scott or Ty didn't work and this Debbie thing didn't work, Sydney would be the one going home. So she definitely saved herself by trying to get the target onto someone else.
I think, again, like, she didn't even realize she was the target.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Julia, I think it's a good move for Julia potentially because none of the guys went home, so she could still flip and then work with the dudes if she wanted to, and then she could work with the females if she wanted to. Also, depending on what she sees fit to get her to the end. But kudos.
I feel like it's a bad idea. It was bad for Julia, just because she was one of the people that voted Debbie, yeah?
Yeah.
So I think that shows that she's really just playing opportunistically.
True.
And in a game like Survivor, you don't want to do that, so.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, so then I just love Jason, Scott, and Ty together. I said it was a good move to like not play the idols and keep them, because now I feel like they are safe for a few votes. I feel like they have
Really?
dodged. Yeah. What do you think?
I feel like people give the super idol like way more power than it's due. It's one idol. Like, sure, it can be used after the votes have been read, but it's only one idol and it's only going to be able to save them once.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like because, they are on Survivor, because they are paranoid, I think that sort of heightens your like emotions or paranoia. So then they are more like afraid of voting for one of the guys who has an idol because it could potentially backfire. Then someone, like, you could go home if you voted for someone who has the idol, I guess.
I don't think that's the way that they're thinking.
I don't know.
I think that they'd probably prioritize getting the idol out of the way, even if it did mean sacrificing one more person, because once that avenue is opened up, it's a lot easier for them to continue through the rest of the game. So.
Yeah, that is true. You just don't want to be that one person on the butt end of the deal that gets idled out of the game, because that would just be majorly sucky. I was going to say something, I forget now, but I don't know. I think people are sort of afraid of the idol. And like Aubry was saying during the episode, she was like, we need to make the least risky move, and that's why she wanted to vote Julia out.
So, good mood versus bad mood for Michelle, because she was the only one of the girls we didn't mention.
I don't know. I didn't write anything down for her because she didn't really talk much. They just told her the plan, and then she said, okay.
I think it's kind of interesting because Michelle went from being in a place of, like, kind of extreme power when Nick was still on the tribe to being in a place of not unpowerful, but not as powerful as she had been.
Yeah, I think she's more of like fading into the background again, which isn't good for her gameplay because I really feel like if she wants to win the game, she has to start making some moves. And I think she has the potential to win the game if she makes it that far.
Yeah, so.
And Joe, meh, nah, nah.
I feel like Joe is kind of just like, if he makes it past a certain point, I think he'll be pulled along as a goat.
Yeah, like the old dude goat to the end because he hasn't really done that much. And then I think he wasn't really influential in the move, but it's sort of a bad move that affects him because he loses Debbie and they were really close. But Joe's just not doing his own thing on the island. So should we guess for next time?
Yep.
So I'm going to say Michelle gets voted off next time. I don't know. I haven't really thought through like the explanation or background for it, but I don't know. I feel like everyone's afraid of the idol. Michelle could be idled out next week when they're trying to do that. And I feel like from what we have been seeing, like looking into the gameplay, if Michelle and Nick actually are dating, I feel like she would have to be voted out now, so then they would have that time to form a bond. Same reason I said Nick got voted out after Neal, because they have a really big bromance going on. They would have to spend a lot of time at Ponderosa together to gain that kind of friendship. So that's my reasoning.
The computer team / my sister said that Julia was going to be voted out. And what did I say?
You said Sydney.
I think that Sydney is going to be voted out because I think that the guys are going to try the same ploy again. But since there is no, like, scapegoat this time, there is not another Debbie, I think that they're going to end up playing their super idol, and then the next best, which is Sydney, will be going home.
Yeah, 'tis true, 'tis true. So, prophecy points, the computer team is totally dominating, like, unbelievably. We saw it happening. The twin computer team has 81.5 points. She got +5 because of Debbie's placement points, +5 because Jason named the episode Psychological Warfare, +4 because Scott made the hashtag sabotage, and then +3 because Debbie got a hashtag blindside on the TV screen when she got voted out. So she's in first. Alyssa, you're second place.
I have 63.5 points. I gained 2 this week because Aubry cried. And I was telling Rachel before we started the podcast, I have gained at least 25% of my points this season from Aubry crying or naming episodes. So thanks, Aubry. You're the best.
Yes, and then I am rearing up the rear with 50.5 points. I got +2 because Julia won the individual immunity challenge this time, and I really feel like there's no hope to catch up because the twin team has like 4 players now, and if they even make it far, they would get a ton of placement points and everything. So unless Sydney and Julia, Sydney could win the game, so we'll see.
Yeah. So, next week, Jeff Probst says that by the end of this episode, everyone's going to be screaming at their televisions, but I do that anyway, so I'm not sure how it's going to turn out for us. But we're really excited to see you guys next week, and hopefully you will be able to see my wonderful face again, because we all know that's your favorite part of the podcast. So, yeah, we love you. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we will see you next week.
Bye.